네, 그래서 여기는 지금 프라이빗 프레스 브루어리고요. 제 옆에 있는 분은 이 프라이빗 프레스의 수장님이라고 할 수 있는 브래드 클라크 씨입니다.
Yeah, my name is Brad Clark. I'm the founder and brewer and owner of Private Press Brewing here in Santa Cruz, California.
And can you introduce me about the brewery here, the Private Press?
Yeah, so Private Press it's a new project for me. It is a member club-based brewery, so I have 700 members. I do not have a tap room. I don't have a tasting room. I don't have a public-facing retail option. I either ship direct to customer or they come and pick up quarterly. It's for the most part primarily me. I do have an awesome part-time employee, Luke, but I do the brewing, I do the blending, the sweeping, the social media. So it's a very personal endeavor and passion-driven for sure.
That's really interesting because you don't see those kind of brewery a lot.
No. I mean, for so long, most breweries have been growing and everything just continues to grow and more tap rooms and more locations and more employees and all that. And I wanted to do something here in Santa Cruz that I could run instead of it running me. This is a lifestyle business. And I mean that in the sense that I try not to work on weekends. I try to make it so that I can do things outside of the brewery that I really want to do and kind of live a more balanced life as opposed to just constantly grinding along with the brewery. So far, this has proven to really do that. And I'm hoping now that I can just fine tune it a little bit and just maintain that kind of steady and healthy pace.
The brewery before you have worked before is like a huge distributed brewery. How do you think about opening a membership-only brewery?
When I left Jackie O's, I started with them at a very small brew pub, and with the amazing team there, we grew into this pretty large brewery that was distributing primarily across the state of Ohio, but also into some other states, and periodically sending stuff internationally. And there was just a lot of moving parts. There was a lot of employees, a lot of departments. And when I had a chance to restart and to do something new, I knew that it was going to be much smaller. So I had a couple different ideas, and one of them was the member-only idea. And there were other things that were a little bit more complicated. Maybe one of them had a tap room, or the other one had a tap room and a brewery.
Yes.
And this one was just simple and straightforward. That was exciting to me, but it was also difficult because there's not like a playbook for that.
Yeah,
there's
right.
not a lot of businesses like this. You kind of had to do some things that you weren't sure if they were going to work or not.
Yeah, right.
And the first year was difficult, just kind of managing everything. But I've cut a groove now, and I'm now just comfortably laying in that groove. And year two's gone really well. Yeah, this has been an incredible experience.
You have been making lots of styles, but in here, you're really focusing on some few styles. Can you tell me about your beers?
So at Private Press, the main focus is stouts and barley wines. And with barley wines, that can also include quads or strong ales or Munich wine, which is something that I've developed here. But the idea behind that was, one, those are the beers that I love making. Still gets me very excited 16 years later.
Wow.
And in California, there's always a need for those styles of beer. You know, coming here, I think the last thing that Santa Cruz or California needs is another IPA. So I wanted to help fill a void. But selfishly, I love making these beers.
Imperial Stout have been changing a lot when
Yes.
the first old Rasputin came in. It seems like you are brewing a lot of kind of a middle at some point. And I was
Absolutely.
wondering about your stouts. Like, what's your style of the stouts? Like, is it like the one you have been brewing since then, or have you changed a bit?
The original Imperial Stouts I was making at Jackie O's would be considered extremely thin now. And over the years at Jackie O's, we continued to kind of add more and more sugar to them to try to get more mouthfeel into them, but also never had quite pushed it into that pastry zone. I've always felt that it's important that you can drink, more than 2 ounces of something. But coming here, I did start to make things a little bit sweeter, but still not really crossing into pastry zone and not adjuncting things that often. So I guess I'm trying to kind of bridge some of the new school stuff a little bit, but trying to bring that old school like sensibility kind of back into stouts.
Yeah.
Also, I don't really know how to do the pastry thing. I could probably figure it out. But there's people here in Santa Cruz and there's people and all across the country that know how to do that and are doing it well and blending and using a lot of different barrel components. That's the more interesting flex that I try to provide here at Private Press.
How is it the process, the blending and the beers?
Yeah, so what's most important for me when it comes time to blend is that I know what I'm blending, like what I want to create. So let's say I'm doing Cosmic Echoes. So I know that I want something that's going to represent both stout, so that could be, you know, chocolate, coffee, and barley wine, which is going to be some fruit and caramel. So I want all those things represented. So, well, let's take this wheated barrel of this recipe and a rye barrel of that same recipe. Let's go over to this other stout recipe that I have in a cognac cask. Let's see what that does. And then I've got this other recipe in rum. And then I'll go to my barley wine stock. This one's pretty old. This one recipe, let's get some of that. Let's get some of this Munich wine. So I pull all these things, right? And I all out. And then I have a graduated cylinder. So I do 10 milliliters for each barrel. I'll take notes in my spreadsheet and be like, okay, that one's pretty good, but it seemed a little thin. So then I'll find the sweeter barley wine, swap those out for something that was maybe a little drier, add those. Oh, that's a little bit better, but maybe it's got a bit of a sugar spike in it. So then I'll pull one of those out and bring in something that's maybe in the middle, or maybe I want more of like a nutty, toasty character. I'll pull in some more Munich wine, and I just do this for days.
It's almost like in cooking, right?
Yeah, totally. It's a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and then you change your recipe, and that's what I'm doing here. And I could do this for weeks, but at some point you do have to stop.
Yes.
And then I pull all the barrels, and then I rack them into my blending tank. And even then, that beer is different than what I was doing at the table, because some barrels, especially if they're older, they have less beer in them. If they're younger, or maybe I've been topping them off, they have more. So when I'm at the table doing my benchtop blends, everything's equal. Knowing that, and then once it gets into the tank, it tastes a little different. I get it in there, then we carbonate it, and then we bottle it. And so by the time it's in the bottle, it's also different than how it was. A little bit more oxidized from the bottling procedure. So it's, when it comes down to it, it's a ton of fun.
Wow.
And since these are the only beers I make, I put out 3 of them every quarter. I get to spend 3 months working on 3 beers.
Wow.
So
that's
it's
really
extremely focused.
Dedicated job.
Yeah, there's no IPA, there's no lager ferments, there's no dry hopping, there's nothing else to worry about.
Yeah.
It's just what I worry about and what I try to do is just make the best beer that I can make here. And whether that translates to the public or not, that's up to them and Untapped or whatever. But I know that I put forth all of the effort that I could, and that's what it all is about.
There's some barrels that make you wow.
Yeah.
Can you tell me more about it, like those wowing barrels?
There's a number of them within this room. Most of the time, I use those as like my anchors for blends.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, this barrel tastes incredible. What can I add to it? How can I make something more than the sum of its parts, right? Sometimes you get a really good blend, but it falls a little short. Like everything's there, it just doesn't have a lot of life to it. And sometimes one of those special ones is what all of a sudden really makes it like pop out.
Wow.
And sometimes that's just like that's an exercise that I do here. I'm always tasting things, always blending, primarily because that's just like, you just practice, right? If you want to get good at anything, you have to do it. So if I find a barrel that I really like, sometimes if I wrap up early and I'll pull some other random things and just kind of see what you can do with it. So when I'm tasting these barrels, what I'm looking for is, of course, its aroma, its flavor, its texture, but also what I'm thinking about is where I feel it. So if I feel it in my throat, that's burning. So the minute I start to feel it at my collarbone or below, that's warmth and that's comforting. So once it hits there, that's when I know that this beer or this barrel is reaching a really nice point in its maturity. Now sometimes when blends are a little, I call it like fire and ice. So
Okay.
if they're a little icy, meaning that like maybe there's a lot of older components and it's just like it's all in here and it's warm, but it's just kind of dull because it's got a lot of oxygen in it. Then I'll try to find one of the hot boys or the uncomfortable barrels
Yeah.
and see if that then brings it to life.
I was wondering what you would think about the pastry boys these days. Like, if you are going to brew some of them or
No.
no?
Probably not. Like I said, I don't really know how to do it. I could probably figure it out. But there's great producers making those beers really well right now. Beer is an art form, therefore it is subjective. I always make the music analogy. You know, there's a lot of different styles of music, and I'm not going to tell anybody what they should or shouldn't listen to. If that music makes you happy, you should listen to it.
Yeah.
And who am I to say like, I think that's garbage? So the same thing goes with beer. There's so many different styles of beer and all of it's selling right now. If it wasn't, then people would stop making it. But what we're seeing right now is the pendulum is swinging back. You're seeing West Coast IPAs again. You're seeing a lot of lagers. You're seeing more and more producers putting out non-adjuncted barrel-aged stout. What I'm trying to do is coming back into resurgence, I feel like. And if I can help it along on that journey, there's nothing I'd be more proud to do. Having a membership base that is buying what I'm making allows me to make the beers that I make the way that I want to make them. If I was a larger operation, I would do things differently because I would have to compete. But with this model, I'm able to make the beers the way that I want to make them.
I was wondering if you want to like get your own brew house or you want to have a tap room.
There's always the option for that. The way I look at it right now is that as long as I can keep it the way it is right now, I'm going to do that. If the time comes when maybe unfortunately my membership falls off or something and I need a tap room, well then I'll cross that bridge. But with a tap room comes more staff. It costs money, and I might then have to start making
Lagers,
some products
IPAs.
that I don't want to. So now with the brew house, maybe if I need to, but building out a brew house is very expensive and you have to work a lot with the city. Right now, if there's capacity at other places and I continue to make good friendships with other breweries here within Northern California, and they graciously allow me to come in and make my beers on their systems, I'm going to keep doing that.
자, 그래서 오늘 이렇게 한번 이 브래드 클라크 씨와 얘기를 해봤는데요. 진짜 좋은 얘기 많이 해주셔가지고 너무 즐거웠습니다. 아직 아마에는 들어오지 않을 것 같긴 해요. 하지만 그럼에도 불구하고 이런 브루어리 국내에도 생기면 되게 재미있을 것 같고요. 언젠가 여러분들도 한번 도전해 보시기를 바라겠습니다. 감사합니다. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Aged.
What is it?
Then aged.